Episode of Be Not Afraid. I'm so excited today to have my guest, Michael Smith. Michael, I've just seen on Facebook, he's written some really profound things. And today I was just reading his post about the common man. Another thing that I hope we'll talk about today is just all of the ideas on how it is that we can save the West from itself, save Western civilization. We're both here in Utah and we're both transplants to Utah. Michael is a very successful businessman, but well, when you hear him talk, you will hear that everyman quality to his voice and to his demeanor, and I really appreciate that. So, welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I want to just get into some of the things. Usually, when I talk to people, I don't have a conversation with them first, and we did have a conversation for about an hour. But I want to just talk to you about what it is that made you decide to start writing.
Sure. Um, I started writing, I guess, probably in about, I don't know, 2006 or so. So it's been 20 some odd years now that I've been doing
Wow.
this. And it mostly was not for any other reason than, I guess, really to just express myself. I felt that I had some things to offer after being um, doing the things that I've done and witnessing the things that I've done and having the life that I've had, and one that was completely unanticipated when it began. My career I've been able to travel all over the world. I've done business in or traveled in 87 different countries at the latest count. And I grew up. You can tell from my accent, it's not Washington County in southern Utah. It's actually deep south. It's Mississippi. I grew up in the first 29 years of my life. I lived in Mississippi and my wife and I probably would have been in high school voted the most likely people not to leave our small hometown. But we did, and we found out there was there was a world outside, and we tried to experience it and have our kids. We have three kids, all grown and out of the house now. Well, sort of out of the house now. My daughter just sold her house, so she and my granddaughter are living here with me and my wife. But that's a blessing because I get to see my granddaughter 24/7, and it is truly a blessing. But we had an opportunity to do a lot of things that we never thought we would be able to do. I mean, my wife had a transportable skill. She was trained as a teacher and spent 36 years teaching.
Wow.
She actually worked for Primary Children's Hospital for about 5 years and developed a program or help them develop a program of education for kids that are in hospital for a long period of time. And she worked with a group of other teachers that matched their curriculums from their home schools up with what they could actually be able to do while they were in the hospital, so that when they got out, they weren't so far behind. And extremely successful program for primary children. She has since retired, and I'm working on it. I'm a recovering, as you said, I'm a recovering business guy, so I'm really working hard, trying to slow down. I just turned 67 a couple of weeks ago, but I guess I've always had a love for the written word. I've consumed everything I could get my hands on my entire life. My grandfather down in Mississippi had the equivalent of what we would call now about an eighth grade education. He grew up early in the late 1800s, early in the 1900s. And my grandparents lived, raised seven kids through the Great Depression. They were farmers in Mississippi, but he was on some of the first school boards in our county and actually helped build some of the first rural schools in our home county. And he always had a love of knowledge. And I got to spend a lot of time with him at his knee and learning from him, and through him and through my parents, I had a love of knowledge instilled in me. So I grabbed everything I could read, no matter what, and it's helped me all along my life. I was asked one time. I lived in the UK for 3 years. I ran a business over there in the North Sea. I've been in oil and gas for the last 25 years or so. And I had one young engineer that had come to me and asked me how I got to where I was and what was my plan. And I told him, I said, I really don't have a plan. Really never had a plan. My only plan was to be ready for the opportunity, whatever the opportunity might be. So I never stopped consuming knowledge. And again, if anybody's to blame for my writing career, it's actually been my high school senior English teacher, who was the mom of my best friend in high school, and she recognized the talent in me and really kind of nurtured the writing aspect of it, and she taught me to love the spoken and the written word. And I just got in that vein, and I see the world. You know, you mentioned my essay this morning about the common man. I mean, that's how I've always described myself, because no matter what I've achieved or what I've done, I've never really changed. I'm that same common man that grew up on a farm down in Mississippi. The same basic rules apply no matter what. And I've learned, even though I've learned a lot of things, most of what I've learned has validated the principles and values that I've lived my life according to. So I decided a few years ago to try to branch out and to do more and to get engaged so that I can spread my ideas. Because one of the things that I found out, and one of the I'd say probably the most common comment that I get on anything that I write is that, and you know, kind of paraphrasing the comments, is that you are right. You put down on in words what I've been thinking,
Right.
and it really let me know that one of the reasons that I do what I do too is to let other people out there know that they're not the only ones that are thinking those things.
I feel like that is the calling of what I would call a remnant people today, because I do similar things. I
Mhm.
write in a way that I hope I'm giving people courage, and I try to write every single day for that reason.
Yeah.
But what I find really interesting is I don't remember how long you've been in Utah, but there's a lot of elitism here. There's a lot,
Mhm.
and I would almost call it false elitism, because a lot of the times those people who are elite, who consider themselves elite, don't do a lot of the reading, don't do a lot of the research.
Mhm.
But they seem to have a very "we know better" for everyone. And the only reason that I focus on Utah, even though a lot of my listeners are not from Utah, the reason that I focus on it is because we are the heart of the West of Western civilization. We're
Mhm.
literally the place that people consider to be the most religious and, by extension, the most moral.
Oh, I
So
completely agree. I completely agree with that. We've been in Utah for, oh gosh, what, over 30 years, 35 years, I guess. We moved here, excuse me, we moved here in the early 90s. And even though we've been away several times, we've always come back. We lived in Park City for 27 years
yeah.
before we finally got to the point that, I mean, Park City just got so, it's changed so much. And I know people say that even when we came here in 1990, it had changed a lot. And, you know, with the ski industry and the tourism industry and those kind of things. And we lived through the period where Park City became basically an all season resort town, because when we first got here, you had to wait on the 2-lane highway going into Park City for the milk cows to go across the road to from the milk barn to the back to the feed barn. The Osgathorpe family owned that farm going into Park City, so you knew every afternoon at 4 o'clock, if you were 4 o'clock coming into town, you were going to have to wait for about 20 minutes for that herd of milk cows, to get across the road. The town had one stoplight when we moved into it, and it had just been put in, so like 3 months before. So we saw so much growth up there that it was unbelievable, and it really just got beyond our lifestyle, and not from a financial standpoint. It's just that we didn't enjoy it anymore.
It's not
I
what you
mean,
chose, right? I
no,
mean,
it is not. It is absolutely. I mean, it's been loved to death. That's the only thing I can say about it. It's been loved to death. We moved there, and there was about 6,000 year-round residents in Park City, and
oh, wow.
probably 80% of the restaurants closed in the summertime when the ski season was over with, and it was
Uh-huh.
just a peaceful, quiet little town. And now it's, like I said, and obviously people moved there for that, and it changed over time, but it's a completely different thing now. But you're right about the elitism, and I don't really know that that's unique to Utah. I've traveled all over the world, and I've seen people like that all over the place who make assumptions about who people are and what they're about, and really don't take the time to really dig into the heart of the matter. And I've found out over the years that what I found out mostly over the years is there's a lot of things that I don't know. And I try not to operate or even write from a perspective of telling people, hey, this is what you should think.
Right,
Everything I write is based on my opinion, and I'm clear about that. And I'm ready to be proven wrong. I invite people. If you don't like what I write and you think I'm wrong, please, write something else. Write a refutation of it. Write a counterpoint. I mean, I
right,
learn from it. I learn more from the comments on the stuff that I post on Facebook than most of the time reading about the subject, because people have so many different perspectives, and sometimes you don't realize how many different perspectives are out there until you really put something out there that people react to, and you get those perspectives.
right.
So I've learned a lot
So,
from that
but that is
in the
something
way I'm
that
writing things. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there is an elite aspect to it, and that's the thing that makes me so crazy about our socio-political process in America right now. Is you get to a point where people are so comfortable being defined as quote unquote elite when they're really
mhm,
not. And that was
mhm,
kind of the gist behind the essay that I wrote this morning about the common man. I mean, the common man, common has become a negative, as a pejorative,
right,
basically. And it's really not, because most of us are common people. And even left and right, we tend to live our lives in a very similar manner. That's one thing I've noticed over time. But there's only like 10% on the fringes of either side that I would really call. I mean, those are the real extremes of both sides of the equation. And those are the people who are the ones who sit back and say, "I know best. I know everything. You need to do what I tell you to do." And I just don't agree with that. I mean, that's like I said, I'm 67 years old, and there's something new I learn every single day about people, about activities, about politics, about philosophy. I mean, every single day I learn something new. And the day I stop doing that's the day I'm going to stop everything, I guess. So it's been a real journey, but absolutely. And we face that. I mean, I am a Gentile basically as compared to the Latter-day Saints church. I'm a Southern Baptist. I always have been. We're born and raised that way. My wife and I have maintained that religious standing all through. I mean, we used to go to a small Southern Baptist church over in Heber, but it's that's who we are. I mean, it's not
right,
just a religion; it's actually who we are. And
right.
uh, it's you
Again,
get
with the remnant, again with the remnant, because we
yep,
we share that in common. I go to a Calvary church, but, same thing. So, here's my thought though, is that it comes down to principles. So, we're fighting all of these things with politics, and we don't listen to each other because of politics. But then there's the concept of principles. One of my main principles is that I treat everybody with genuine, not manufactured dignity until they prove they don't deserve it.
right.
But people can prove they don't deserve it, and that makes me, that means I have a lot to learn, I'm sure. But in my, where I am now, that's how I see the world. That there are certain people who I'm like, nope, I'm not going to play your game. I'm not going to acknowledge you. Now, one of the things that I just started reading that you had sent me was your pamphlet, and you're talking about things like Socratic discussions. Can you explain that? Because I feel like it's a lost art, and it's something that
Yep.
I've been working to bring back into classes just by watching Peter Boghossian. Um, and I've seen Socratic seminars go wrong when they teach them to gifted classes in elementary schools, but there's an agenda to them. And I think you can't have one
You
with an
can't.
agenda.
You actually can't. When you begin a Socratic process, you don't know where it's going to end up. I mean, in all honesty, you just really don't know, because what you're after is the truth. What you're after is to what that person's perspective of the truth is. And the Socratic method that I've always used and always pursued is basically one thing that I find out about people when they make statements is they don't think that next level. They don't look out to that next step. They treat that statement as an endpoint, and it
Mhm.
rarely, if ever, is. So my process is to go through, and when somebody makes a statement, then I typically follow up with a question that's formulated around, and then what? And then what happens? And then when they tell me the answer to that, I say, well, okay, then, and now what happens next? And when you get people thinking in those terms, you find out one of two things. You either find out they've thought themselves really well through the whole process and they understand it. And you have to look at their opinion then as valid because they've really thought it out. Or you find out people are just making statements that they don't have any basis to make. And most of the time I find out that people are making statements that they have no idea. I mean, I had one like that this morning. I pulled a quote, a comment off of that very post that we're talking about the common man, where I had a person that said, "Well, I'm willing to pay more taxes if it helps, any other child have access to something." And my question to them was, "Okay, well, what does that really mean? What
Right.
what are you what are you really thinking about when you say that? Because how are you going to define what that child really needs?" And where does it stop? I mean, we've really moved now over in our society where welfare was basically keeping people alive and not starving in the streets to basically buying cell phones for people and having SNAP benefits pay for candy.
Or
I
even that
mean,
housing is a human right and that everybody should
yeah,
get housing, and we're not
and
talking the most basic because people complain when their home is
yep,
I mean, when I was 18, I aged out of the foster system, and they took me to these places where you could get housing. It was like HUD, right? You could get
right,
housing, but and I actually appreciate this. I didn't wanna live that way. I didn't wanna live in a place where I had to pull down the Murphy bed, and who knew what kind of violence might happen, in the night. So I had to think, and I had to go, "Well, do I wanna take advantage of this HUD/welfare system, or do I want to go and work the night shift at Taco Bell where I can also get shot?" But but at that point, at that time, I could afford to, pay a quarter of rent in an apartment, so to have
yep,
3 roommates. Um, and so that's the whole thinking through. We don't think about what access means. If access to social programs means that we're turning our kids into socialists, is it worth it to pay for that?
right. I mean, basically, what we've gone from is a system that, and I grew up poor. I grew up poor and down in Mississippi on a farm. I mean, we had a farm and we scraped by. My dad actually finally, I was already into high school before he actually became really relatively successful. He bought a couple of auto repair shops and really did well with those and sold them several years. I mean, like a decade later. But we really never did have a whole lot. But I never wanted for anything. I mean, my parents always looked after us and always provided the things that we needed. Now, it might not have been the things we wanted, but it were the things that we needed. And maybe we didn't understand them then. But I learned a lot of lessons from that experience in that, and that's one of the things this young lady that commented on my post this morning took out of it. She looked at it as a negative of the challenges that I'd gone through as a child and the things that I learned from my grandfather. And my point was, is you missed the whole point of the story. The
Right.
whole point of the story were the great things that came out of it that allowed me to live the kind of life that I've lived over the past 60 some odd years. I mean, it's not about missing things. It's about what I got from those things. And you have to make a decision, and we have to make a decision about what we're going to provide our kids. And I've written a couple of times. I mean, I've driven from my home to my daughter. My daughter lives over in Taylorsville, like to where did live until she signed the papers on her house today, selling it. So I drove over there the other day to take care of something, and there were junior high kids walking
Mhm.
up the street protesting ICE.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting here thinking, these kids have absolutely no mental basis to be able to do this.
Right.
Somebody has inculcated or indoctrinated them with some sort of view that they're out on the street walking with signs.
Right.
And I'm thinking, that even extends to our high school kids now. There's no, I mean, there's really no independent education. I mean, my daughter went through Park City High School. And Park City High School was like in the top 10 in the nation at the time she went through it. This was the
Right.
early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. And she went to the University of Michigan, going into University of Michigan Ann Arbor with
Mhm.
almost a full year of credits that she'd gotten from her senior year
Right.
or her junior and senior year of doing advanced placement classes. Well, they cancel all those now because they're racist. Because there's not, I mean, Park City in Utah as a whole, when we moved here, especially with one of the whitest places on the face of the earth. And I mean, it was a shock to us to drive up to McDonald's and see white kids working in there instead of black kids in there. And I don't mean that as a racial statement. I mean, that's just the way things
Right.
were in Mississippi.
Right.
Um,
And I
so,
appreciate that. Like, please don't hold back on those kind of things
oh,
because I love the truth.
I am
So
actually one of the least racist person you'll ever find, and even though I grew up in the tumultuous civil rights times of the '60s, and my class was one of the first ones that were desegregated in the schools, so that I got moved to a different junior high school or middle school now they call them that. I knew almost no one in because the way they shifted the school districts around. So I got to experience all that. But I've hired people, I've worked for people, I've I've worked with people on teams from all over the world. So I have absolutely no bias toward any color, race, ethnicity, anything. My focus has always been, can you do the job? If you can
merit.
do the job, you get the respect. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, I've worked with Indian engineers, I've worked with Russians, I've worked with Middle Easterners, I've worked with Muslims, I've worked with Christians, Jews. I mean, and I've never even asked about any of that because it
Right.
didn't matter. What
Right.
mattered was, can you do the job? And that's how I've always approached everything. And I realize there's some other people that don't approach life that way. But we're all human. You're, and to your point, I'm the same way as you. I'll give you respect until you prove me you don't deserve it. Some people prove that really quickly. Some people take a little while for you to find it out. But until you actually prove to me that you can't be trusted, I'm going to trust you because I'm just that kind of person. That's the way I start out. And as far as kids,
I'm sure you'll be right back. Yep. Keep on.
no, no, I was going to say it's hard to underestimate the level of insulation they get from reality these days. I mean, parents are partially to blame. When we
Mhm.
started this whole everybody gets a trophy culture, and I know that's a trite, rote phrase that
No, I totally agree.
conservatives have
I
used.
used to be so frustrated by watching my son, who was not athletic at all, and, um, watch him get an award, and I would be like, "No," I would sit in the car and I'd say, "Do you think you really
Well,
deserve that? Did you work hard for that?" And and he's better off for it. So,
I've
yeah,
had to earn everything that I've gained over my entire life, and I have no problem with that. I mean, I was a moderate athlete in high school, and not enough to get a scholarship, enough to be a starter on the high school team, but not talented enough to get a scholarship to college. So I had to pay my way through school, and I did that, and I learned from that as well. But it taught me so much. I mean, it taught me that there's a cost to things. I think about what Thomas Sowell, our famous economist, and probably one of the most
yes.
underappreciated individuals in America, said about, he said there are no solutions, there's only trade-offs.
Just a second,
And
my dog is being awful.
no, no, that's fine. I'm just glad it's not mine.
Neville, stop it. Stop. Lay down.
I uh,
He never is.
I have a 75-pound pit bull Labrador mix, and my daughter's dog is a Labradoodle that live here with us. And my daughter's dog absolutely hates Amazon delivery trucks and FedEx
Oh,
trucks. So if anything comes by, my office is on the front of our house. So if anything passes by on the street, you're probably going to hear them. But
yeah.
no,
It's the
I
snow.
just,
It's the snow that's bothering him.
yeah,
The
I
subject
just,
that I oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. What I'm really interested in, because I wasn't around for these time for this time, and we're going to discuss it in school, um, is the civil rights movement. I wanna know what that was like integrating, um, what it was like integrating, and so you said you were one of the minorities, so in yours, it was switched because usually we have a very strong narrative of what the civil rights movement was, right?
Yeah.
We have Ruby Bridges, and the other kids who are walking into schools. We never hear any other side of the story. And I know just in a kind of modern day example, I have a nephew who just moved to Florida. And because he lived in Utah for forever and because he was the strong um, majority, he's now that he's what is he? I think he's a junior. I think he's a freshman. Now he's like, Aunt Carib, I had no idea that people could be racist towards white people.
Hmm.
And he's experiencing that now, right? And
Yeah.
I'm just my like whenever I have a chance, I'm like, let's go to lunch when he comes to visit. And I'm just like, remember, there are people like me who don't think that way. So just always remember that no matter what comes at you, right?
Yeah.
So I'd love
Well,
to hear. Yeah.
sure. I'll be happy to give you my view on it. And again, I'll couch that by saying that this is my experience. It might not match other people's experiences, but it is what I lived through. I mean, I was born in 1950 and school in 1965, right in the teeth of
Mm,
sort of the wind up to the Civil Rights Act. I mean, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 had just gotten passed. Um, and I benefited from the fact that my parents and my grandparents were not racist. I mean, even though we grew up in Mississippi, and there's a lot of racism, but in all honesty, I lived in Michigan for a while and I saw more racism in Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan than I ever saw in Mississippi. But one of my best friends in high school was a black kid. His dad was a science teacher in high school that I went through, and Bernard and I ran around all. I mean, we were running buddies. We did a lot of things together, but it was a really tough time. And the one thing I would say about the civil rights era is it was a beautiful idea that was destroyed by the execution of it.
oh, please
Um,
expand on that.
we actually went from again we as and maybe we is a bad term, but society as a whole tends to make errors to extremes. So what I saw within the civil rights effort was what Martin Luther King said, and I've always believed that people should be judged by the content of their character. We started taking our government forces to force people together, didn't give us time, didn't really give anybody time to assimilate to the new idea. And a lot of people were prejudiced against it because they didn't understand the differences in cultures. And that's another point that I've made. I don't believe that anything that we face is racial. I believe race has been used as a lever and as a division point against our country in order to obtain political advantage, because it's really all about culture. If you
Mhm.
look at the American culture, and opposite to what a lot of historians think, we do have a definable culture in America.
How do you define it? As soon as you come back. Sorry, everyone.
It,
The snow, I think, is maybe flipping.
yeah, I think it is. We lost power. I don't know if you did or not, but we lost power this morning for a few
I
hours
haven't.
early.
Let me knock on some wood.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Let me
yeah,
tell you, it gets really dark when you're used to having electricity. It's not very fun. But
yeah,
but I think that the point I was trying to make is that the problems that we face are not racial; they're cultural.
yeah.
And America has proven over the years, when we assimilate people into the culture, if you buy into the American culture of freedom, if you buy into the free enterprise system, if you buy into the fact that you should be judged based on your character rather than the color of your skin, then people tend to do well. And it's really interesting. I've studied this quite a bit. And if you look at the new immigrants to the U.S., if you look at the new minorities from, say, Nigeria or from Asia, I mean, Asian kids and Asian families as a whole out earn white families
Same with
significantly.
Nigerian.
Indians are
Same
the
with
same
people coming
way.
from Africa who don't get caught up in, like you said, you use that word access, and that's why I was like, we need to be careful
Yep.
about access because we think, oh, we're giving them opportunities. But if we're giving them opportunities to hate our country, maybe we want to think back on
Yeah.
giving them those opportunities.
And that's another aspect of culture. I mean, it really
Mhm.
is. I mean, we need people to assimilate into our common culture because you can't balkanize a nation. You can't have pockets of states that are one way and other pockets of other states that are another way. If we're going to go forward as a nation, we need to go forward together as a nation. And to do that, you have to buy into a common culture. You don't have to be Christian, you don't have to be Islamic, you don't have to be Buddhist, you don't have to be Jewish, but you do have to agree to certain common cultural norms and certain common cultural principles in order for us to continue to be a nation. And right now, and it gets back to what we were talking about the kids in school, is we're being taught, our kids are being taught division right now.
Right,
I mean, they are honestly being taught division, and they're being taught that it's okay because white people are a minority and are majority, and white people have been in power, that it's okay for you to hate them, and
right,
it's not. I mean, if I do something bad to you, it's okay for you to hate me. But if I've never done anything bad to you, you shouldn't be able to hate me just because I have a white skin. And I
right,
mean, those are words that I never thought would be coming out of my mouth, but we're there now. I mean,
right.
we
We
did
are.
well. I know that the civil rights area was a violent time, and it was. I mean, a lot of people tried, particularly in the South, tried to push the civil rights movement down, but it couldn't be stopped. I mean, it was like the tide coming in. You're not going to command it to stop, and it should not have stopped. We should never have been as a country in the position that we were in. But we screwed up Reconstruction after the Civil War too. I
That's what
mean,
I
like
was going
really.
to say, like, I actually wrote that as
Oh,
in my notes, was Reconstruction is a lot like it. Yes,
we as a nation completely screwed that up. And it had Lincoln survived and not been killed, it might have been different. But it was really, and being from the South and growing up in it, I can tell you the South was punished
right,
harshly,
right,
and forced to accept things that not of their own will, that caused a lot of animosity, that drove a lot of division. And again, it was a cultural thing, but it was focused. The carpetbaggers used race as a tool to beat up the Southerners with.
right.
And slavery was a horrible institution. I am not, and would never argue that. But there's a lot more that went on underneath that. People had, my hometown got burned to the ground. I mean, during the Civil War, it was burned to the ground. I have ancestors that fought on the side of the South, but never held slaves at all. None of no, as far as our research goes, our
Well, and the
genealogy
northern
research
treatment
goes.
wasn't better. So,
No, no, it
there's a
actually
lot of
wasn't.
people. I mean, there's so many stories about slavery that aren't told because number 1, if you told kids at the very beginning, because I've just flat out told my students, "Why don't we look into who started chattel slavery in America?"
Yep.
The very first person, Anthony Johnson. Have that conversation, and suddenly the kids start to look a little bit differently.
Yeah.
They go, "Wait a second." And then it's like, "Look, but I shouldn't be held accountable for that."
Well, and
I
it's
even have a grandfather who was a member of the KKK. I still shouldn't be held accountable for that because it's not my life. It's not my choices.
well, you shouldn't be punished for the sins of your fathers. I mean,
Right,
it's just, I mean, biblical teachings tell you that.
right,
I mean, you shouldn't be that way. But the way it's taught now, and it is, it's kind of like our policy toward Taiwan. It's like strategic ambiguity
okay,
because
yeah,
the parts that they leave out now that are relevant, that cause our kids to believe the way they believe. I mean, if you listen to the way slavery is taught today, it's almost like a bunch of white people got together in the U.S. and they went over to Africa and they captured a bunch of black people and they brought them back over here and enslaved. And I've had conversations with kids too that don't understand that it was the black tribes in Africa that were subjugating their own racial, the same racial group, and selling them into slavery.
right.
And it didn't start with America. They were sold to the Arabs of the Middle East long before they started those
Oh, if you listen to
transatlantic
the Ottoman
slave trade
Empire,
started.
You
Yeah.
get into some pretty
Well,
horrendous
I mean,
things.
The Ottomans were an equal opportunity enslaver. They didn't care. They enslaved everybody. But I mean, that's the way it was in the ancient world. I mean, the ancient
Right,
Greeks and the Athenians and the Romans. I mean, they all held slaves, and it was
right.
you conquered an area, you took slaves. I mean, and
And what
American
they'll say is
Indians.
nothing was as bad as the chattel slave, and again, I say, well, then let's go to Anthony Johnson because he
Yep,
sued a black man sued to be able to own slaves for their entire lives.
yep.
That's how
Well, and I mean, even today, we still tend to hold on to the idea of the noble savage that
yeah,
was developed in the late 1700s when the Native Americans and the South American tribes were being conquered, and there was this idea of the noble savage. Well, the savages were neither all savages nor were they either all noble because
right,
they captured territory. That's the thing that just kills me about this whole stolen land thing
right.
is it depends on what period of time you want to stop the analysis because for thousands and thousands of years here in America before the first white man ever set foot on the land here. Tribes fought over land. They subsumed other tribes, and it's always the superior power, the superior civilization always overcomes the weaker one. That's just the law of the land.
And to pretend that we've evolved past that with the authoritarianism that we have both seen and both that is regularly called for. Going back to these kids protesting, there are kids, children, like not even fully developed kids. They're still prepubescent and they're saying things like, if I had a gun right now, I would pew pew all these, if they are conservative, blah
Yeah,
blah blah. And the parents cheering it on has been hard to watch. I've seen that locally. I'm so glad these kids are using their First Amendment right or their civic duty, their civic responsibility. But here's the issue: the kids don't know what civics is.
yeah.
They don't know what it
Well,
means to be responsible.
the advantage of achieving an advanced age that I have achieved and being on this side of the grass
Oh,
for so long
yes,
is that you get to look back and see how stupid you were when you were young.
right,
If you live long enough, you will learn you were dumb when you were young. And unfortunately, it takes a long time to get to that point where you can actually look back and honestly reflect on how actually stupid you were. But we don't have to be that way. And the story that we're telling today, Carrie, is the story that humanity's told for millennia. We go through these cycles of forgetting history, and as we forget history, we repeat it. And so, I mean, I see so many. It's such a shame because I think that, from my perspective, when we finally got through all that mess in the South, when we finally got to the late '80s, maybe the early '90s, we started beginning to see racial harmony. I mean, people didn't care. And you started to see things like, I mean, and I know this probably sounds bad, but you started to see interracial dating, you started seeing interracial marriages, you started seeing multi-ethnic children, and all through the '80s, the late '80s, and the early '90s, all the way up to the 2000s. I think we were progressing in a good way,
right.
and
Yeah, I mean,
for
you're
some
talking
reason,
about my life, my generation, right? I am
yeah.
biracial. So,
Well, and then all of a sudden we took a wrong turn somewhere again, and
right,
it centers. I think it centers around. There was a culture or a cult of victimhood that arose in the late '80s, and it comes a lot, I think, from the development of critical race theory and how race explains every bad thing that's ever happened to a minority. Little beknownst to them, there's a lot of these bad things that happen to white people too. I
right,
mean, there's actually more white people under the poverty line right now than there are black people. I mean, it's not as much as when you factor in the percentage of the actual population, because I think blacks are like 13 to 14% of the U.S. population. But numerically, there's almost, I think the last time I looked at it, there's like almost 5 times, I want to say, it's 3 to 5 times. Don't tie me down to a number, but there's 3 to 5 times as many white people under the poverty line as there are black people, and they're experiencing the same destitution and problems and issues. And that's a reason that I've come to the conclusion that it's cultural because if you look at it, white people have drug problems. white kids struggle with the same kind of things that black kids struggle with,
Yep.
and we're too stupid to recognize that.
The
And
difference is that because we're taught that we have no, I mean, literally, I've got friends who will say, "What is our culture? We have no culture."
right,
And this we're doing the same thing that South Africa did,
yeah,
where we're starting to say, I think it's West Virginia with the new governor, starting to say white men cannot get business contracts.
right,
That's
right,
insane. That's insane, and if you don't think that that's going to cause a war, I think they're creating a lot of things that are causing a war intentionally. Um, Total segue, but again, with the when you don't have principles, when you aren't rooted in any kind of truth or grit, and I'll say grit with this one, I think that's the right one. I've just been thinking about these shooters lately. And as we're taught that truth is not acceptable, that it could be painful to someone, well, then we're making them less resilient
yeah,
while claiming that we send them to school to become resilient, but we're making these people less resilient when we say if it's uncomfortable to be in the gender that you were born in, then that's enough. You no longer need to be in that, and we all need to accept it. And whatever you do is excused. That's because we have no principles.
yeah,
We don't even have the principle of you got to work through. I have a child who's considering the military, and it said, if you want to be a Marine, if you want to work through the suck, and that's the
yeah,
way as
yeah,
Americans, that's what people came here. People did not come here in big glamorous clothing and just say, "Oh, do this and do this for me." They worked through the suck. And now
yeah.
we're telling people they shouldn't. My When I define America, I define it as a story of redemption, resilience, and grit. Those are our
No,
principles.
absolutely.
To
Absolutely.
me,
That I mean that and that's one of the things that my family taught me in growing up in Mississippi. Of course, when you grow up on a farm, you're a lot closer to the grit than when you grow up in a city sometimes. But you get to see life at its very basic levels. I mean, you're taking care of animals, you're growing crops, you deal with the seasons, you deal with bad weather. I mean, all this kind of stuff, and that pretty much meets the definition of the suck. And all you can do, I mean, it's like one of the quotes that I've given to my kids. My youngest son is in the military. He's in the army. He's a cyber warfare specialist in the
wow.
army. But we were taught that there are things that you can control and there are things that you can't control. And the things that you can control, you should. But the things you can't control, you just have to fight through. And
Right.
the things that I've told my kids, all of my kids, and I made them write it down. And it's a quote from General George S. Patton, and he said he was telling his troops in World War II that when you find yourself in the middle of hell, keep going to the other side. And that's the only way you can get out of it. You have to be strong enough to get out of it. And we are. I think our educational systems are raising a bunch of weaklings now. You're being taught to that you should be able to say something, and people should never say anything back against you. You shouldn't. There are no opposing opinions. You shouldn't listen to them. Other people, anybody's opinion other than yours is not valid. And that's where in a roundabout way, that's where I came back to the Socratic method many years ago. Is that that's how I help people work through those kind of situations. Now I do run into people that aren't interested in the truth. They're only interested in their position. And if they can't defend it, they don't care. It's just their position. I'm right, you're wrong, and that dichotomy exists for them, and you're never going to talk them out of it. And the other thing I've learned in life is you're never going to reason somebody out of something they didn't reason themselves into in the first place. If they haven't really thought about it and they haven't really come to a fact based or reality based conclusion, then you're never going to get them out of it. You mentioned the transgenderism thing. I have a really big problem with that. I don't have a problem with people who believe they should be more feminine, or that there's always been males that have been more feminine than others. But you can't expect society to fold itself inside out to accommodate you.
Mhm.
Yes, if you want to live as a female, I don't care, but you're not going to force me to say that that's what you are, because you're not. You never can be. And I
Mhm.
understand the mental pain that going through a paradox like that probably brings on. But we don't, I mean, you don't take a psychopath and support his delusions because all you get is a more effective psychopath. And I don't mean that transgender people are psychopaths, but I
Well,
mean
I
that
mean,
you don't.
I think there is a training to be that way. I mean, when you
Yeah.
look at how many of the violence, because I don't know if you've ever seen the video of the British woman who does, like, spoken word art, and she's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"We've transcended to be this," and just talking about how they're basically she sees them as gods.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
see yourself as a god, you see things in extreme black and white, right? You see things in I could never possibly do anything wrong. I was reading, or I am reading, Rules for Radicals Defeated, and it talks about how Alinsky is a dualist. So if
Hmm.
he does something, it is always right. This is a man who dedicates a book to Satan, but if he does something, it's always right because he's on the quote unquote right side of history. But if somebody else does the exact same thing or less, they're wrong no matter what they do.
Oh, yeah. No, and it's funny. I'm gonna plug my Substack here because I've got a piece on there that deals with that. I wrote it's called Unlicensed Punditry, and it's at michaelsmith.substack.com. If anybody wants to go take a look at it, but a few weeks ago, I had had enough of Alinsky and Alinsky tactics, and I had been thinking about this for probably close to a decade or so, and I do things like this. I will jot ideas down and they'll sit in my notebook and marinate for years and years and years. And maybe I'll come back to them and, something will trigger me to go back and look at what I was thinking at that time period. And I was in the process of developing a response to Alinsky's 13 Rules for Radicals. And what I came up with, and I finally published something a couple of weeks ago, I called it 13 Rules for Rationals. And basically it was a one for one counter to Alinsky's 13 rules that rational people should use. And they're an easy way to defeat people who use the Alinsky rules, even though Alinsky used a lot of just pure human nature in there, but it was the negative side of human nature is what he focused on. And you have to want to find agreement. You have to want to find the truth because if you're only looking for advantage, you're never going to find the truth. And that's the one thing I've tried to chase for the last 40 years or so, in the last 20 some odd years of writing, is where's the truth? What is the truth? You know, I completely disagree with this idea that everybody creates their own reality. I have my own perception of reality, but I go back to the original Greek and Roman reasoning that says that, or the Greek and Athenian reasoning, that something either is or it is not. And you either find out that it is or you find out that it is not, and that's how you find reason. um, I wish I had the magic wand that I could wave and tell everybody what the reason for humans being was, but it's that search for reality and that search for truth, I think, is what drives us forward as humans. And you've always got these charlatans out there who want to take advantage by not telling the truth. And there are people who hate truth. I mean, it is just it's built into us as humans, I think, because we want to take advantage, and we want power, and we want money, and we want a
Well,
lot of things.
postmodernism, right? I mean,
Oh,
postmodernism, literally no truth
listen, don't
but
get me
power.
started on postmodernism, or we're going to be here for a week. There's two things that I think have harmed civilization more than anything else, and I mean, I even include Hitler and Lenin and Stalin and Pol Pot and I mean all these people and Mao, and it's postmodernism and deconstructionism.
Oh, yeah.
Deconstruct Jacques Derrida on the deconstructionism. It was another noble idea that was poorly executed. It was supposed to be a language tool to help us find real meaning in language, and what it's turned into is a complete perversion of language where anything can mean depending on what somebody wants it to mean. I mean, that's why
Well, when you
racism to me has absolutely no meaning anymore. I mean, it just
right,
it, it just doesn't have any meaning
agreed,
because it's used for everything, and
agreed.
everything that the postmodernists come up with, postmodernism, first of all, is not real because it can't even stand up to its own rules. When you say that there's no rules, and then the first thing you do is start making rules, then you've got a bogus philosophy. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's terrible. I mean, it's unreality. It's fooling people into believing things that just can never be true. And I hate it. It's a bad thing for kids to even get involved in. And I was doing some things. I actually wrote another piece a few weeks ago and my dogs are at it now because the Amazon people just came to the door. Um, the I was when I had my kids when my kids were in school. My wife and I, she being a teacher, I mean, she knew what was going on in the school systems, so we understood what our kids were being taught. And if we didn't agree with it, then we were able to give them the counterpoint. I mean, we didn't homeschool our kids, but in a way we kind of did because we did the counterpoint to the things that they were hearing so that they would at least hear a different opinion as far as what they were being taught. And I ran across a gentleman, a Brazilian guy by the name of Paulo Freire.
Right.
And
Mhm.
Freire actually came up with the pedagogy of he
The
wrote a book in
oppressed.
1968 that basically drives almost everything that's going on right now in contemporary education. And it was called the pedagogy of the oppressed.
Yep.
And basically his perspective was is knowledge is not to be inculcated or not being trained into the kids. You shouldn't teach them memorization. And to some degree, agree with that. But you've got to give the kids enough real knowledge for them to be able to make decisions on their own. And his system basically is the oppressed oppressor model. And that's why we see the point that I was making is that the what we're seeing kids, too young to even drive, marching on the streets right now, holding up anti-ICE signs. That is the end result of the pedagogy of the oppressed,
Well,
and it's false.
let me take that another level. I have an interview on Saturday with a legal immigrant who was only barely 18 years old. He came here from Venezuela when he was 9. He saw a lot, a lot. In his school, he was assaulted because he supports ICE.
Mm,
He supports ICE because he saw a lot. And he's getting called names by American kids, even if the American kids are Latin, whether or not they're Latin or white, it doesn't matter. They have not seen the kind of a lot that this young man has seen, but his oppression meter is erased the second that he does
yeah,
not accept it.
yeah, and that's how it's become political. It's not even about illegal immigration anymore. It's about one group achieving
It's about
power
turning our
or
kids into
dominance.
socialists.
Right, right.
That's all it's about, and that
It's classic class warfare. I mean,
right.
it's the same thing the Soviets were doing back in the '60s. One of the reasons the Soviets, I recall something I wrote, and again, if I have
You're
an
fine.
idea, I write it down to get it out of my head.
Same.
So I was thinking about this the other day, and I remembered, and I couldn't remember at the time where it came from, but it came from a series of lectures that were done in the late '70s and early '80s by a former Russian immigrant by the name of Yuri Bezmenov, and Bezmenov
It's
was
enough. Mhm.
a propaganda expert with the USSR, and his one of his jobs was to find ways to infiltrate and to convince America that communism was better than capitalism, and you should surrender to communism and all this kind of stuff. And this is kind of a bastardization of a bunch of his lectures, but basically what he was saying is you're never going to do that to America because the middle class, there is a middle class, it exists. Number one, it doesn't exist in Russia. You have the haves and the have-nots, and there's nobody in the middle. But you in America, you have the middle class, and they're happy. I mean, they have upward social and economic mobility. And he made the point in one of his speeches that at the holiday celebrations that the average American family has a feast and they exchange gifts and presents that are reserved for the highest levels of the Russian society and Russian government. That people you're not going to ever create class warfare as long as there's a happy middle class in America.
Mhm.
And we've tried to destroy that. I mean, when I say we, and the powers that be in the U.S. have tried to destroy that, because even 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 the Democrats and Joe Biden and the left talk about how they want the middle class. Well, they've done more. They did more to hollow out the middle class than anybody in history. And without that middle class, without that social mobility, without that independence, without that ability for people to achieve whatever they can achieve, you're going to wind up with class warfare, and you're going to wind up, and it's not going to be pretty. Um, one of
It's
the things
always
is
death. It's always death, imprisonment. Um,
yeah.
that's the thing that bothers me the most about watching these kids is they have no idea what happened to the Red Guard after they were no longer useful.
Well, I mean, they actually talk about how Hitler-esque the right is, but the right's not the ones that are inculcating and building the brown shirts and the stormtroopers in the school systems.
Right.
I mean, these kids. I mean, a lot of these kids, I think now, and I'm not speaking because I haven't been really close to the school systems for quite some time now that my kids are all out, older, and relatively independent. They need support periodically, but we all do. And I'm not that close to it, but from what I can see, they're not getting both sides of the story,
No,
and
they're
they
not.
don't know how close to being used as pawns as they're coming now. And it kills me. I mean, it kills to see the young spirit be shunted off to victimhood and to perpetual grievances. And the one thing you'll learn about human nature is when you give somebody something, it's never going to be enough.
Right.
We've lost the concept of charity in the United States, and now it's all entitlement. Complain. I mean, you got people that you could give a brand new red Corvette, and they would complain because it's not blue. I mean, it's just that kind of
Right.
attitude, and it's just very dispiriting to see our country going that direction.
You're right, and what I always say, it's a famous quote, but a government that can give you everything that you want can take away everything that you have. And
Absolutely.
that's something these kids are not. This is why I say stop calling it civic duty. Like you guys
Yeah.
have decided, and I knew this, I'll be honest, I knew this when Deidre said, we want kids to have to perform civic duty in order to graduate. And because of who she is, I thought, I'm sorry if you have a different opinion of her, but my opinion was because of who she is, I was like, oh, so we're going to have protests in the streets.
Hmm.
That's literally what I thought.
No.
Um, and that's what we have. We have protests in the streets in my area. We have the police saying we support the kids using their First Amendment rights. And I'm just like, you guys are so neutered. You have children are children for a reason so that they can have influences and mentors to do their best in life. And we take that away from them to use them as pawns. We are abusing, I'm not, you're not. Society, the left especially, is abusing these kids.
Yeah. No doubt.
I've
No
never
doubt.
seen anything like this. Well, I mean, we haven't. I haven't in my generation seen anything like what we're experiencing right now.
Well, I, I agree, and I mean, like I said, I'm 67 years old. I've never seen anything like it, and I lived through the civil rights era. I lived through all the forever wars that we've gone through and the protests around those. The
Yeah,
Occupy Wall Street protests and all this kind of stuff. And I've never seen anything like we've got like going on now. But it's Gramsci's slow march through the institutions. I
yes, it
mean,
is.
we're living it right now. And
Right.
it's not just, listen, I'd love to just blame the kids, but it's the teachers, it's the parents, it's people who aren't willing to step forward and
It's
say,
the
look, guys,
policies and the programs. If a teacher gets
absolutely.
something, because I'm torn because there are some awful things going on in schools.
Yeah.
But if the policies and the curriculum, and especially if the curriculum comes in on a Chromebook, and I've seen it, I've seen Khan Academy lose its ever loving mind and talk about dictators and have it all in red and say, the January 6th insurrection is an example of
Mm,
dictators, blah, 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 for our kids, and not say, that digital media literacy is is a massive problem. Instead,
Yeah,
they praise it. So just because of time, and I like to let this go so that I can easily download it. Tell everybody where they can follow you again. I'm sorry to make it so
sure.
abrupt.
No, no worries.
Yeah.
I'm on X at Utah Prez, UTAHPREZ, and that's not anything special. I was a president of a company in Utah once, so Utah Prez became my handle. At Utah Prez on Facebook as well. I am on Substack at Michael Smith, just michaelsmith.substack.com. You can find me on any one of those, and I'm accused of being prolific, but I usually have some idea every day that I try to put down on paper because I think there's so much going on right now. People say, well, how do you come up with so many ideas? Well, if you've lived through the 24 hours, there's something that you need to be concerned about because things are so volatile right now that things are changing so fast that it's even hard to stay up with it, even if you're just writing something every 24 hours. But you can find me there. I've got I think I've got about 35,000 followers on Facebook, so you can find me. There's a lot of Michael Smith, so you might have to look at my at Utah Prez to find me on Facebook. But
At
I
first, I thought
try to
it was
write
Michael
for.
W. Smith. So I was like, "Oh, wow,
I
Michael
don't,
W.
I,
Smith is
I
turned
don't,
to
I
leaf."
don't sing. I can't carry the tune in a bucket, so I always wanted to, and I always wanted to be musically inclined, but that unfortunately is not one of my skills. But yeah, you can find me on that. And listen, Carrie, you're more than happy. I'm more than happy to be back anytime you get ready to, because I can already tell if we get talking. Like I said, we'll be here a week because there's a lot of things
Right?
we can talk about these days.
Oh, I would love to. I'm trying to make sure that I've got somebody going every Wednesday so that I can be more, reliable. Oops.
Okay,
Jennifer Atkins said, "I already follow you." So and thank you for the episode. Thank you for watching. Please share, you guys. I think what I said in the very beginning, we're a remnant. We're a remnant. All we're trying to do is put out as much good as we possibly can, as much common sense as we possibly can. Maybe we don't get everything right. I'm okay with that because I literally believe that we're not God. And we're here to be humble and to help each other when we can. And how we look at help is different. So I will have you back on because I'd like to discuss more of your pamphlet
sure.
on discussing with people who don't agree with you.
I even
So
forgot about that. That's a new project, a digital project that my daughter and wife convinced me to doing. It's basically in the tradition of the pamphleteers from the late 1700s, and what it's around is for people who are conservative or conservative adjacent or conservative questioning to learn a little bit about modern conservatism and learn how to counter arguments that they face. And each month, I'm addressing 3 or 4 different issues, and I've already laid my wife and daughter. My daughter's my digital product advisor, so she's helped me lay out all this stuff. And it's a once a month production. The February issue is coming out on Friday morning at 9 o'clock this week. It is designed to help people understand what conservatism really is, and like I said, how to counter the arguments, the common arguments that you're going to hear, and do it respectfully. I mean, from a Socratic and a fair and a values based perspective, to do it respectfully and try to get to the truth.
well, this was wonderful, and I will get off and I will actually schedule the next one with you because I'd like to talk
Great.
more about that and what it means, especially if we can do that before caucus, that would be wonderful. So
Yeah. Fantastic.
so
Fantastic.
thank you so much, Michael. Have a great day, and
You
I'll
too,
send you
Gary.
over some
Thank
of
you.
these reels as soon as they're ready. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.